And welcome to, I have no idea what we're naming this, so we'll name it later. And I am here with Curtis Van Slyck, my very first guest. This is Interviews with RAs. That's what we're naming it, Interviews with RAs. And Curtis is the Director of Compliance at Northeastern, but also the Chair-elect. Hello, Chair-elect Curtis. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. I had no idea that I was the first one. That adds the pressure. I've never done anything like this before, but I'm excited to be here. Yeah.
So here's my question for you to get started. For somebody that maybe doesn't know, like a research administrator who's just starting out, or someone who's like, I want to be a research administrator, because strangely people are finding this career that way. What is NCURA, and why would they want to join it? Like, tell us a little bit about it, just to get an idea of like what we're talking about here.
So NCURA, it's a bit of a forced acronym, but it's the National Council of University Research Administrators. It's the C that I always forget. National Council of University Research Administrators. It has university in the name, but there are other research institutes and hospitals that are a part of the program as well. And like you said, my role is in compliance, not so much on the administration side. So there are all kinds of research support personnel all across the United States. The other sort of misnomer in the name is the national component. NCURA is composed of 8 regions. 7 of them are all across the United States, but there's also an international region. And I got an email earlier this morning for someone who works for my institution, but is based in Canada. And so it's great to be able to connect her both with our region, Region 1 for New England, but also the international region, so that she can meet other colleagues in Canada and all around the world as well.
So
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me something. How long have you been an RA or been in research administration?
I guess that depends on how you define it. I started in the world of the IACUC, so Animal Care and Use Committees, or Animal Research Oversight, back in 2010 or so, I think. I worked for Harvard Medical School's IACUC for about 7 years. And then I worked over at Harvard Central Administration and was sort of not a research administrator, but I worked with software that supported research administration for a couple of years. And then I came over to Northeastern in 2021 in my current area, where I touch all aspects of research compliance.
Now, were you always a member of NCURA, like from the beginning, or did that happen like later on? Because not everybody who's in research administration ends up at NCURA. So when did it come on your radar, and when did you join?
So I joined NCURA in 2021, and I actually looked this up before our call, because if you go into your little membership profile, it tells you when you're joined. Yeah, I looked it up because I was like, I don't actually know. Prior to being a member of NCURA, so in the land of the IACUC and also the Human Subjects Research, the IRB, primer, which I could not tell you what that acronym is. Nope, not a clue. I'd have to look it up. But primer is a little bit more well-known in the IACUC and the IRB world. So I was a member of primer back when I was doing IACUC stuff. And then I joined NCURA in 2021 when I joined Northeastern, because my boss, Jeff So, and my other colleague, Amanda Humphrey, they have historically been very involved in NCURA and encouraged me to get involved as well.
Jeff is actually going to be on this as well, talking about foreign collaboration and involvement. So yeah,
Excellent.
I'm getting all y'all in here. Here's the question I have for you, because when I first, so you and I kind of got to know each other when you were leading the volunteers, and something that I found, if you're a new member to NCURA, it can be really hard to kind of build a relationship, because like a lot of people have been doing this for a long time and we've known each other for years, and so it can feel like it's hard to get to know people because everyone already knows each other. Can you share a little bit about how volunteering, because I saw how so many new RAs like really quickly found their space. How does volunteering for NCURA or in any role like enhance your ability to build those relationships?
I think volunteering is a fantastic way to get involved and to get to know people, mainly because it gives you a reason to talk to people that you otherwise might have to come up with reasons on your own to talk to them, right? And I am, I'm pretty introverted, and I'm not shy, but I'm very introverted. And so I'm not inclined to just walk up and start chatting with someone. But if I know who they are, and I have a question for them, or if I want to ask them to do something to help out, or I want to commend them on a presentation that they gave. It just gives you an opening. And, I know that we'll probably talk about this later, but there's a huge spectrum of volunteer opportunities. And some of them are just super simple, no experience needed. You work at the registration table, and then you get to interact with every single person who's registered for the conference. And you get to put names to faces, and they can do the same for you. And it's just a great jumping off point for some of those conversations that can turn into something more.
What about, so like you mentioned that, because that's a really good one, by the way, because then you get to meet everyone, and then it's almost like you know everybody, like without, just because you gave them their name tags. But what are some of the other, because you mentioned there's like, there really is, over the years, I've volunteered in so many different capacities. What are some of the ways in which people can get involved? If so, someone's like, all right, I'm in NCURA, I want to get involved, but I don't want to work at the table. Like, what are some other areas that they can get involved in?
Sure. I personally take a really broad perspective on what counts as volunteering, and I think that NCURA does as a whole. And I think that there's a huge spectrum of volunteer opportunities depending on what your area of expertise is, what your experience is, what your capacity is in terms of how much time you want to spend getting involved in the organization, and just what your personal preferences are. So I think it's important to remember that even things like presenting on a topic at a conference counts as volunteering. Writing an article for NCURA's newsletter or their magazine, all that counts as volunteering. Volunteering for a committee at the regional level or the national level. If you are a little more experienced, and I think that for someone who's just starting to get involved, that all of those are good opportunities. But just to speak for a moment on some of the sort of larger scale opportunities, you can lead committees after you've been around for a while. You can run for offices at the regional level. You can get involved at the national level with some of their committees. And once you have a lot of experience, you can become an NCURA peer reviewer and go to different institutions and help to evaluate and improve the programs at their institutions.
Do that?
It's very cool. Yeah, that's a really cool program.
Everybody, I'm learning about this right now.
You can talk to Jeff about that one because he is an NCURA peer reviewer, and it's a goal of mine to do that too. And I will openly say that I have applied for volunteer positions at the national level and not gotten them. Right? They have a select committee on global affairs that I applied for, and they said, "Sorry, you don't have the experience," and that's okay. That just means that I have to do some other things first and come back and try again in a couple of years.
You mentioned like people who have a lot of experience, like there's a spectrum, right? We have like definitely people who are going to join that are new. And then you have people who've been doing this for a long time who maybe are now they want to get involved. Cause I was heavily involved, many years ago. I was chairs of a couple committees and whatnot. And then I took kind of like a little bit of a break. And then I came back in. So how do you think, just out of curiosity, someone who, let's say, who's been doing this a while, who may not necessarily be thinking about jumping ship and getting another job right now, but how have you found that are in your experience that has helped people to like find opportunities? Like, because NCURA is a networking space, but it's also like a great way to find your next job or like who's hiring or whatnot. So have you seen a lot of that? Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, I've seen a fair bit of that, especially within and between the regions, right? Especially, I have seen a lot of that within regional leadership where folks change jobs and they say, oh, so-and-so is working with this person over here now. And I think it's not surprising that those people who are more involved in regional leadership and they're more involved in NCURA are the ones who are moving jobs.
Yeah.
Because they have those connections. If you have worked with someone through NCURA and they have seen how you operate under pressure, or when you're dealing with a difficult situation, or where you're dealing with an interpersonal conflict, then that's all of those skills are transferable into your everyday job, right?
It's like I don't even have to ask the question in an interview. Like I've already seen how you can respond. That is, right. I hadn't even thought about that. Like I definitely thought about the relationship building and so on, but it hadn't occurred to me how. Because in some cases, you work with people on committees fairly intimately for a full year where you're connecting all the time. And they get to see you like in the full spectrum of I have a headache or I want to, how do you show up as yourself at any given given space. That is very, very cool. Um, do you find, actually, this is actually, so one of the things I found was that you mentioned earlier how research NCURA is like wider than just research administrators, like in research support. Um, have you like, how do you feel like it sort of allows people to see the different spectrums of what research administration has to offer now compared to, say, like the old days when we first started, we were like glorified accountants, but now over the especially the last 20 years, it has taken such an expansive view. How have you found that to manifest in terms of people being like, oh my God, I love Aya Cook, or what if,
I found it really interesting. I think that there's a lot of hunger for a broad base of knowledge and a broad base of understanding. Like I said, I come from a compliance background, and so I've never worked in pre-award, I've never worked in post-award, but through NCURA, I've sat through the Essentials workshop, and I have a pretty solid understanding of how those areas work. And I think, from an educational standpoint and a conference standpoint, because we are always trying to come up with new and fresh offerings for educational stuff, it forces us to reach a little farther from the basic sessions. Because even though, we do have a lot of people at our regional conferences every year who are new to the field and who need that basic stuff, in order to get people to come back, we have to offer them something new and different. And so we are reaching out in the direction of things like, I know that we have a session at this year's regional meeting about export control, which is an area that I think a lot of people don't know a whole lot about.
I don't, I'm excited.
Yeah, and I know that the two people who are presenting it are very, very good. They presented on it last year at the annual meeting, and it went really well. So I'm excited that they're going to bring it to New England specifically this year. I'm trying to think of some other areas. Oh, right. And some of it is just about how to improve our workplaces. We have a professional development track and a management and leadership track at our conference, and it's just about how can we make our workplaces better for everyone who's working there, from the perspective of how can we better manage neurodiverse employees? How can we make a more inclusive space? How can we, to that end, how does having an inclusive research environment benefit compliance?
Yeah.
And so I think it encourages us to sort of reach deeper and broader in the subject matter that we touch. Did that answer your question? I feel like I don't know, on a tangent.
It actually made me think about a couple other things because, it's, one of the challenges is that going back to the research administration, you used to be able to be a cradle to grave, and now a lot of people, you really do have to specialize. If you've been doing it for a very long time, you may have the cradle to grave knowledge, but like I still find myself being like, for me, it's IRB clinical trials. Like that's something that I'm deeply investing my time and energy into because it's not something that I have historically had a lot of experience in. And I think that like these different classes and the different ways in which we expose people to other aspects of research administration allows you to sort of decide. And I think decide this is the area I want to go in. And one of the people who I actually believe maybe is speaking in Region 1, if not in Region 1, is going to be on Syra's, on our, what's it called? Our Wicked Good Chats. Good Chats, right? This is Eleanor Kuzmar. So Eleanor is the director of compliance at Harvard. And it's really funny because she and I grew up in research administration together on Syra's team. And I remember when we were first promoted to managers, we had a little group of managers that would get together and we would just talk about what it's like to be a manager, so on and so forth. And Eleanor and I kind of spearheaded that back then. But she was always like, research administration is fine, whatever, but I love compliance, right? She had her eye on compliance like 20 years ago. Like she was just like compliance. And it was because she used to talk about how going to NCURA and going to the compliance sessions gave her that passion that now she's over at Harvard doing this, which is, I think that's a really cool, right? Like, yeah. Because when you're like younger and a kid and just coming, like, I feel like I was a kid when I was in my 20s and 30s, just FYI. So like, I'm like, when you're younger, you're like, you don't realize how your trajectory can take you and like how these relationships bear fruit later.
And I think too, the benefit of meeting all of these people, not just for your personal career, but you have this whole expansive network of people whom you can ask questions of.
Yeah. My God.
I've always felt like whenever I go to a conference, I often I'll go into it thinking, we have this challenge that we're dealing with at Northeastern, and it's so bizarre, and I'm sure everybody else has their shit together, and we're the only ones who are dealing with this. Which is never true, never true. And then you get to the conference, right? You get to the conference and you get exposure to all of these people who are dealing with the same questions, who have the same problems that you do. And I think it's helpful when you go back to your institution and you're thinking about how to address it, to have that sort of diversity in perspectives and to see, okay, well, this institution is doing it this way, but that might not apply to us because they're much bigger than us, much smaller than us. They're a hospital and we're not. This institution is handling things in a very different way from how we thought we were going to approach them. But they're demographically a lot more similar to us, and maybe we should try that out, and maybe we should, work together to see if that solution is better for us.
I actually want to come in a little bit more granular now based off of what you just said, because, I'm really all about local and hyperlocal. So that's sort of my jam. That's why I do the South Shore Conference for Women. A lot of the things that I do are in the region because I'm very local based, right? And I'm also an introvert. I actually like the way you put that. You're not shy. You're not shy, but you're an introvert. Cause I've all been trying, I am also not shy, but I am an introvert. So I'm not going to come up to you. I loved how you described that. And so I like to have a local group of people that I run into all the time. And, the regional aspect. So I'm just obsessed with Region 1 because of how local it is. So can you, how do you find there's the difference between if you were to go to the national conference versus a regional conference, or if you were to engage and volunteer on a national level versus a regional level, what do you feel like somebody would thrive in? How are they different?
That's a good question. Our regional meeting, I think, is a lot more manageable. It's just 3 days. We've got about, depending on the year, give or take around 200 people that attend. It is really easy to see the same people and to build connections, and it feels more manageable. And we tend to, Northeastern, we like to send newer research administrators to the regional meeting just because it's a little less overwhelming. The annual meeting in DC is a whole different beast. It is, I think they have around 2,000 attendees. There are so many different sessions. It's fantastic. You will learn a lot. You will meet a lot of different people, but sometimes it's a bit harder to find the people that you really want to meet and the people that you really want to talk to. Everyone's great. They're friendly. But the likelihood of the person who is standing 2 feet over from you being in your time zone and someone who works a job that it's interesting to talk to those people regardless, because again, the diversity of perspectives and learning how people do things in other places is really interesting. But it's just a much more overwhelming experience, and you're sort of spoiled for choice because there are so many sessions going on all of the time. It can be a little bit harder to sort of plan your time there. When it comes down to volunteering, I think, like you said about Region 1, you meet all of the same people and you keep talking to those people, and you run into them all the time and you build really strong relationships. I know people who have officiated one another's weddings that they met in NCURA Region 1.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there are really, and that's one of the things that I hope that we, not to give too many spoilers, we're doing a keynote panel at the spring meeting this year. And one of the things that I am hoping that they talk about is some of that, is sort of the ways that our personal and professional relationships overlap, and the ways that, especially when the research administration landscape is a little more uncertain or turbulent, that those personal and professional relationships can help sort of get us through those complicated times. The national level, I haven't actually been as involved with volunteering at the national level. I have run the compliance track for the annual meeting. I'm doing it right now for the second time, and that's about it as far as I've been involved at the national level. But so far, I I don't know. I think it's just a little harder to forge those deeper relationships when you are when you're just not seeing people as much, or when they're far away, and a little harder to connect with in sort of all of the noise that is
The annual meeting.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, that's like I find like it's like the annual meetings are really intense. Like there's a lot that happens very quickly. Everybody's there. So, it's interesting because you and we've gone to the same meetings. I think I don't like, other than the regional actual meeting, I may have walked past you, like in the lobby at some point, like, but seeing, and I know you, right? But like on a regional meeting, I think it's easier to find the people. It's easier to find a corner and sit down and talk about something. Whereas I think because everybody all over the country is at the annual meeting, there's just so many things you got to get through. Because we all have a list of things. I got to go to the sessions. I've got to get various meetings, business meetings. Then it's, I always want to go down to the vendors because I love all the vendors. And so I want to go down and around and see everything. And then it's nighttime. And I'm like,
Right.
what happened to my day?
Well, that's a great point. And I'm the same way where like you really will be up against a whole sea of people as you're walking from one place to another at the annual meeting. And I have walked right past people that I know just because I don't even see them. I'm just so, there are so many people, and I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going. And it's just like, it's loud and there are people everywhere. So it's just exactly like you said, a little bit intense.
Yeah, I think, and I really do like the region meeting for that reason as well. So I'm curious, right, as we sort of start to wrap up, this is a question I'm asking everybody because, I think this is interesting. I want to get responses to how do you describe to people what research administration, so somebody says to you, what do you do, right? How do you answer that question? And then or like, what is research administration? You can answer either or both because I want to have a bunch of recordings on this one.
Well, admittedly, mine is more compliance focused. But it's basically you say that.
Do Curtis?
Yeah.
Now, how would you answer at a party?
I say, I help keep our faculty members out of prison.
Oh, so good.
That's what I say.
Really great pitch. Because then they say, well, how do you do that?
Right.
Yep.
Because and having worked at Harvard in the past and having worked at Harvard when the Charlie Lieber case was going on, when their chemistry department chair had a major conflict of interest issue and ended up being walked out of his lab in handcuffs.
Oh my God.
And here I can point to that case and I can say, I try to make sure that doesn't happen.
I mean, it's terrible that he did, but but it's a really great, that is a good, party line there. So then here's the other question, right? Okay. So now you say National Council of University Research Administrators, and someone says research administration. What's that? How do you answer that question?
Research administration is all of the support work that happens to make sure that the operations of scientific research can happen. We are the ones who put together proposals, who make budgets, and who ensure that we remain within the guardrails of what we are supposed to be doing.
That's so good. So the reason why I'm asking this is because I don't know how to answer this question. And so I thought and a lot of people don't. And so my thought was, I'm going to ask everyone who I interview, and I'm going to put together a reel of basically just basically everybody's answers. Because the answers are going to be different based off of our own experiences. And so I feel like it's just because we're all trying to explain what on earth, that's the best description.
And I actually, I put in here in my notes, as we were leading up to this, that one of the nice benefits about making friends in NCURA is that you don't have to do that. Is that you have people who automatically know what you're talking about, even though, even if they don't do exactly what you do, they at least have a general idea of what you do. Meanwhile, when I try to talk to my mother about what I do, she's, in her mind, I still quote unquote work with mice.
Oh, oh my God, that's amazing. I and that is very, very true. Because I love talking about research administration. So Syra and I, she's my sister and we geek out about research. That's mostly what we talk about. So, so you're right. It is really nice because it gives me a lot of meditative pleasure there. So, was there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Hold on. Let me take one quick look at my notes.
You're a great guest, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Oh God, look at this. Perfect.
Oh, the one thing that I was going to say was when we were talking about sort of different volunteer opportunities, the national website, and I can send you this link, has a really helpful volunteer pathway page that shows all sorts of different volunteer opportunities for people of all levels at both the regional and the national level, and for folks who really want to get involved in a big way. You know, maybe you have dreams of being the national chair. It can show you what that pathway can look like from, starting at moderating a collaborate community and sitting at a registration table all the way up to national leadership. And it's a really cool page and it's a really cool resource. Yeah.
I had no idea that that existed. See, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, because it's like I've been a member of NCURA, for like 20 years off and on, and I didn't know about this, right? And like, there's so many great. I actually really love this organization, so I'm just going to go with, if you are a research administrator and you're not a member of NCURA, then just be one. And
yes, and there are so many cool opportunities too. I am very interested in sort of international work. Northeastern is a cool place to work because it is an international university. We have campuses in Canada. We have a campus in the United Kingdom. And one of the other things that NCURA offers that I have not done yet, but I think it's really interesting, Amanda Humphrey has done it, is a global fellowship program where you can apply to the global fellowship program and they will, support you for, I think, like $3,000 to go stay at another research institution somewhere else in the world that's connected to NCURA for 3 weeks and just learn how they do things there.
I so want to do that. I want to go to Pakistan. I want to go home and do it at the Aga Khan, which is the hospital down the street where I grew up. And so I've been thinking about, I too am you have a lot of similar interests in terms of what we want to do.
It's very cool. I mean, like, they have so many opportunities. And that's sort of, that's some of why I was interested in that, what is it, Select Committee on Global Affairs, but they have all of these sort of special interest committees as well, that are really interesting when you start digging into what is out there at the national level. My understanding is that at the national level, they started primarily volunteer, but now they have this big, robust staff. We had a visit from a research contingent that was facilitated by NCURA from the Republic of Georgia. And so it was all these, some of them were research administrators, some of them were research faculty, and they came to Northeastern and we talked to them for a little bit about the research that they're doing and we're doing. And then I know that Claire Chen from NCURA National put them all on a bus and drove them down to New Haven, Connecticut, and they visited Yale. And those are connections that I don't know how I would make otherwise.
That is so cool. Curtis, you were amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom, because seriously, this is going to be this is going to give people so much direction. It's amazing.
Good.
So thank you very much.
And I hope that a lot of them are in Region 1 and want to get involved with volunteering.
Do they get involved with volunteering right now?
Okay, well, they should go to the NCURA Region 1 website, and the new volunteer chair for 2025 is Christopher Medalis.
I love him.
Yes, he's fantastic.
Oh,
he's taking up the torch of volunteer chair, and so he will help people get situated.
I will put the link in the show notes. So if you want to volunteer, click on this on YouTube, click on the show notes. If you're on LinkedIn, click on that link. But volunteer